The other thing that I love about people with ADHD is when they bring their attention and their focus, it's like shining the brightest light on that thing, that person. I think that is one of the greatest gifts that people with ADHD can bring, is that energy and that fun and that enthusiasm that just really lights up a room.
We are Gold Ivy.
Our mission is to empower you to own and unleash your truth.
Stories of resiliency are gold, and ivy grows in hard places.
Those hard places are what creates space for light to shine through.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production. Welcome back to the show. Today we are diving deep into a topic that is often misunderstood and covered in unnecessary shame: the adult ADHD experience. And for those of you that don't know, ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder.
If you've ever felt like you're constantly running uphill while everyone else is on a flat track, or if you've spent years labeling yourself as lazy or unfocused, this episode is for you. We're moving past the stereotypes of the fidgety child and looking at how neurodiversity actually shows up in our modern, high-pressure adult lives.
I thought I knew a lot more about ADHD than I actually know. I learned so much today. So joining us today is someone who brings both the deep professional expertise and profound personal insight to this conversation, Dr. Marcy Caldwell. She's a licensed clinical psychologist and author with over 20 years of experience. As a nationally recognized expert and someone who lives with a vibrant, neurodiverse family herself, she specializes in helping adults, families, and even corporations move from surviving to thriving.
Let's get into this extremely compelling episode, but first, let's hear from our amazing sponsors.
Hey everyone, if you're like me, January through May means cold and flu season, but this year, I'm ready. Besides the All Things Elderberry gummies my kids ask for every morning, I want to talk about something that is a non-negotiable in my fridge, the Everyday Elderberry Elixir from All Things Elderberry. They call it an elixir, not a syrup, and here's why. It's made with organic, farm-fresh Missouri elderberries, never dried. That gives it a light, uniquely juicy, and palatable consistency. It's not thick or overly sweet. And the difference it makes for me is huge. For me, a tablespoon anytime I feel that first little tickle in my throat or before a big event where I absolutely refuse to be sick. It either completely kicks symptoms to the curb or lessens them so fast. Even my oldest, Cora, is asking for it. I will never not have it. It's my daily defense. And who needs that defense more right now than our bride-to-be, Brooke?
Ooh, yes. Wedding season is basically a marathon. Between the bridal showers, the bachelorette trip to Florida, and all the main events, I don't have time to be run down. The thought of getting sick before my bachelorette trip, no thank you. I'm taking my elderberry elixir with me every morning, whether I'm at home or on the road. It's my little insurance policy so I can fully enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime season without worry. It's literally for the mom who holds everything together and the bride who is trying to hold her wedding together.
That's right. Whether you're a busy parent, a traveler, or a bride prepping for the big day, you deserve this defense. Stop letting illness slow you down. Head over to allthingselderberry.com right now.
And for 15% off your very first order, use our special code GOLDIVY. That's GOLDIVY. Get the Everyday Elderberry Elixir. It's the defense you deserve.
Before we get back to today's conversation, I want to talk about something that hits most of us as we enter the premenopausal and menopausal years. That sudden, frustrating shift in how our bodies feel. We often talk about hot flashes, but we don't talk enough about the menopause middle. The stubborn bloating, the brain fog, and the fact that our digestion just seems to stall.
This isn't just in your head, it's in your microbiome. Trust me, I have worked for years to continually care for my gut health. As we age, our estrogen and progesterone levels drop, and we actually lose the diversity of the good bacteria in our gut. This dysbiosis leads to an increase in inflammatory bacteria, which is why we suddenly struggle with constipation, mood swings, and even sleep disturbances. That's why I want to introduce you to Relievance.
Relievance isn't just another fiber supplement. It was developed by Dr. Robert A. Gans, a nationally recognized board-certified gastroenterologist with over 30 years of clinical experience. Dr. Gans saw the limitations of standard fiber products and created this proprietary 8-fiber formula.
What makes Relievance different is the science of balance. It combines 8 different fibers, each selected for their specific viscosity and solubility. This allows the formula to dissolve gently and support your natural gut rhythm without the harsh gas or bloating often caused by single fiber supplements.
By increasing your fiber intake with a blended formula like Relievance, you're doing more than just staying regular. You're feeding the beneficial bacteria that help regulate your hormones, clear that menopause brain fog, and stabilize your energy levels. It's a tool to help fight the physiological effects of aging and reclaim your daily comfort.
It is third-party tested, gluten-free, and contains 0 artificial additives or fillers. It's just pure, clinically balanced support for a sensitive stomach. Sign me up.
If you're ready to target bloating at the source and support your microbiome through this transition, it's time to try the formula Dr. Gans developed for his own patients.
For your convenience, you can find Relievance Fiber right on Amazon or visit relievancefiber.com. Feel like yourself again with Relievance.
And now to this episode of the Ivy Unleashed podcast.
Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Today's a special day. We are talking about adult ADHD. We have been wanting to do an episode on this for so long. Andrea specifically has been pushing this.
Yes.
And we have the one, the only Dr. Marcy Caldwell in the house. Dr. Marcy, welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and if you're not tuning in on YouTube, first of all, I'm obsessed with people that have red hair, and I just love Dr. Marcy's hair. It's not super red, but it's so stunning. This room she's in is stunning. So before we dive deep, I just want to say, check out YouTube.
It already feels good for the nervous system.
It does. It feels like I'm ready to just jump in here. But yeah, Dr. Marcy, we really want to talk about ADHD because it, first of all, isn't something we've talked about. We've had 5 full seasons of our podcast, and we talk about mental health. And neurodivergence is just something that affects everybody and affects people more than they realize. And so today we really want to just talk about what ADHD is. Maybe people that are like questioning if they might need testing. I know I'm one of those people. I have people in my family that like are self-proclaimed. They think they have ADHD, but they're unsure. And so really just talking about what it is, taking the shame away of maybe thinking that we have some attention issues. We have lots of great questions for Marcy. But before we jump into those, we are starting every episode of season 6 with some instant impact. So if you could leave our listeners with, something that that will unpack, but that you'd like to leave them if they can only tune in for 5-10 minutes today, what would you like to say to them?
I think in regards to ADHD specifically, or really kind of neurodivergent specifically, I think if I could only leave one message for the world, it would be what we're talking about is difference, not deficiency. And there are great strengths that come with all the different types of brains. And yes, there is a lot of struggle as well for all of the different types of brains. And really what we're talking about are we now know there are these differences. And as we understand the differences, sure, we're starting to come to them because of the struggle that they bring, right? That's what's making them kind of show up. And I'm not trying to diminish that at all. That struggle is very real. But I think it can sometimes be seen as, this is a different brain that doesn't work and needs to be fixed. And that is not my orientation. And what I see is a different brain that works really, really well in certain circumstances. And the world doesn't provide those circumstances all the time. And so how can we create more of those circumstances to bring out the beauty of that brain? And how can we celebrate that? And how can we kind of reduce the friction that exists between kind of how some brains operate naturally in the world and how the world kind of requests that they show up.
Yeah. Can we get into what some of those traits are? I'm thinking a lot of adults live years being like, I'm just lazy, I'm unmotivated. And then it comes out, well, maybe they do have ADHD. So let's talk about some of those traits that you see.
If I were to just kind of nail down the basic underlying principle of ADHD, what we're really looking at is a regulation difference. So ADHD brains tend to go all in or all out on things. I like to think of, so if you could imagine a brain as like one of those mixing boards in like a fancy sound studio, right? And a neurotypical brain's mixing board would have lots of fader switches, right? Like it would look like what we think of as a mixing board. I'm not a musician. I don't spend a lot of time with mixing boards, but I've seen them on TV. And right, we can get just that right level at any given time of attention or energy or focus or even like voice volume, right? Like just enough to like whisper to the kid next to you, but not be heard by the teacher. Um, and just enough energy to kind of get through your 9 a.m., but still have enough for your 2 p.m. appointment, right? And so neurotypical brains are really good at finding that just enough level. ADHD brains, they would have the exact same number of switches, right? Like their brains do all the same things, but rather than fader switches, they would all be on-off switches. They'd all be like light switches. They go in or they go out. And what makes an ADHD brain go in or out is often different than what makes a neurotypical brain kind of turn on and get excited and be able to kind of modulate. So we're looking at kind of these two things. One is this tendency to go all in or all out, and the other is what makes it go all in or all out. And so what that ends up looking like is, oh, I'm just lazy because I can't do this hard thing over here, but I can totally dive into the thing that I'm into, right? And it's that juxtaposition that often gets people really kind of torn up inside because it's like, well, obviously I'm capable because I can do this thing that I love, but I really like it's torture for me to do this thing that I find boring. But that's the nature of how the brain works, that it can go all in on the thing when the motivational structure is there, but when the motivational structure isn't, then it tends to go all out.
Okay. Oh, I love that. I love a good visual. That is so helpful. And I think to, adults mostly are listening to this, and I'm thinking of them as children and what this would look like in a classroom. You're told to sit for a very long time, not a lot, especially in Minnesota, indoor recess because it's so cold or the weather's not ideal. So I'm thinking, okay, if someone's reflecting back on their childhood and maybe what this looked like when they were a kid, or if they have children that they're thinking, there might be something going on here, what would that look like for kids in the classroom?
So in the classroom, we have the kind of prototypical picture of ADHD, right? Of kind of kids that are up, down, and all around, kids that are talking quite loudly, talking out of turn, have a really hard time staying on task with anything. And those kids tend to get picked up pretty early, right? Because they tend to cause difficulty in the classroom. They're a classroom management issue, and so they get picked up pretty quickly. But that's not the only way ADHD shows up, right? It can also show up as the girl in the corner who looks like she's paying attention, but actually her brain is somewhere else, right? And it can show up as the really gifted kid who's doing just fine and is eager to please, but has, forgotten to hand in several assignments, or the homework's done, but it's like in a pile at the bottom of the bag, or, it gets done, but it's, not done to their potential, right? And so those are the kids that tend to get a different kind of messaging, right? And none of them are great messages, right? Like the people who are having a hard time, with their behavior in class are also getting a lot of negative messages. But these kids that tend to not get an answer for why they're struggling often are then made to kind of try to find it on their own. And invariably, whenever we as kids see that we're different from other people, we invariably just come up with this answer of there's something wrong with me, right? And I'm bad. And that's what we see the most often with people who are coming in for late stage diagnosis, is that they've lived for many, many decades with this I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm defective message that's really hard. It's not impossible, but it's really hard and takes a lot of time and effort to kind of chip away at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about adults now that were told whatever they were told, and then they identify with it. And then, maybe they still haven't ever gone to therapy, so they still don't have a diagnosis. So they still haven't, normalized that there's a lot of people that struggle with these same things. Mm-hmm. It's just this invisible thing. And I worry about the shame people carry, or, what they must tell themselves about who they are, because your teachers do shape your identity. I think back to specific teachers and coaches that changed my life, and they definitely affected my identity. And it makes me worried for some kids. It makes me excited for others, because I love teachers, but I think there's just too much on their plate. They have my daughter has 24 second graders in her class, and my son, same thing. And the teacher's pregnant, and she has a special needs child in the class. And it's just like so much is asked of these teachers in the first place. Mm-hmm. But this is just embedded in who they think they are. And it's such a pivotal time as a kid. And so that's why I really wanted to talk about the classroom, because I think we can all imagine ourselves in these rooms and seeing the wild boys jumping off the walls and going crazy in these scenarios. And I think it's so important that they get outside and that they can move, and that they can, have that release of having to be contained in this space. And so I'm curious for people that feel like, okay, whether it's them or their child, like what are some coping mechanisms for, okay, we're not quite in therapy yet, we're not quite to medication or anything like that, but I sense something like, what would be helpful for a child you want to help with? Maybe you think they have attention issues, or you yourself want to be like, okay, what are things that typically help someone with ADHD to be able to function and thrive? If you've listened to the podcast for a while, I used to be the biggest skeptic about supplements. I thought, I can definitely get everything I need from food. But then I started to realize that high quality, clean supplements weren't about replacing a healthy diet. They were about optimizing my health in a way I never thought possible. For instance, I discovered what so many women eventually do. I was deficient in magnesium. Now that it's part of my routine, I'm sleeping better and I feel absolutely amazing. It made me realize that quality matters more than anything.
When it comes to taking supplements, ingredient integrity is a must for us both, and that's why we trust Smidge. Smidge offers a small line of foundational supplements, core nutrients, including 100% whole food vitamins, and digestive support for people who prioritize real food, but know even the best diets have gaps. They obsess over ingredient integrity, crafting minimal, clean products with zero additives and rich nutrients meticulously sourced from around the world. We both love Smidge's magnesium, but with my chronic gut health issues, Smidge's digestive support is my tried and true. I use their digestive enzymes every single day before meals, and it has been a game changer in post-meal bloat, fatigue, and overall digestion for me. If you have any digestive issues, their enzymes, including the original and HCl plus enzymes, are a must try.
Smidge just dropped some incredible whole food supplements that we've been loving. First up, their Kakadu Plum. Most vitamin C supplements are just mass-produced synthetic chemicals, but this is the real deal from Australia. It's pure, whole food vitamin C that your body actually knows how to use for glowing skin and a rock-solid immune system.
I'm also obsessed with their Australian emu oil. You won't find this at a typical health store. It's the best source of vitamin K2, MK4, which is a total game changer for women's bone and heart health. While plant-based K2 is hard for your body to process, Smidge's emu oil is already pre-converted, so your body absorbs it instantly.
So, if you want a brand that is truly backed by research, derived from sustainable principles, and only wants to provide you with the freshest, highest quality nutrients, it's Smidge.
Head over to getsmidge.com to check out their magnesium, emu oil, kakadu plum, and their fantastic digestive enzymes. And don't forget to use our code GOLDIVY10 at checkout for 10% off.
Are you tired of the endless battle with cravings? Do you dream of managing your appetite without the hassle, the side effects, or the hefty price tag?
Then it's time to meet Dr. Stephanie. She's not just a doctor of pharmacy. She's a certified diabetes educator and a leading hormone expert. She listened to your struggles and formulated a gentle, natural solution, GLP Wonder.
GLP Wonder is a revolutionary supplement designed for an easier path to appetite control and hunger management. How? It works by combining powerful natural ingredients like areocitrin and green tea extract to naturally support your body's own GLP-1 levels. This signals fullness to your brain, curbs those persistent cravings, and even helps fight insulin spikes, that stubborn, fat-storing hormone.
The result? Reduced hunger, better appetite control, and a more natural way to stay on track with your diet and goals. It's effective, it's safe, and it's affordable. Just one capsule per day for powerful results.
GLP Wonder is now easier than ever to find. Look for Dr. Stephanie's GLP Wonder at Walgreens, CVS, and Walmart. And we are thrilled to announce that you can now find it in Target stores nationwide.
Stop waiting and start winning the fight against cravings today. Find your nearest store, or to learn more and shop the full Dr. Stephanie's collection, visit drstephanies.com. And for a limited time, use code GOLDIVY30 for 30% off all Dr. Stephanie products at drstephanies.com.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to a mom yesterday on the soccer sideline, who's a teacher, and we were talking about kind of ADHD strategies, and she was like, "Well, isn't this just good for everyone?" And I was like, "Yeah, things that are good for folks with ADHD are good for everybody. It does not go the other way around, right? Like things that are good for neurotypical brains often do not work at all for folks with ADHD." But for people who are kind of like, I don't know if my kid's ADHD, I don't know if I should do these things, I often say, just do them. Because even if they're not ADHD, they're going to be really helpful. And, and you can arrive at a diagnosis later, that's fine. Let's just do the kind of best practices now. And so best practices in my mind, I usually start thinking kind of on two fronts. One is, how can we create external structure? And by external, I mean definitely living outside the person with ADHD's brain. But I also mean as much as possible living outside of the parent's brain or the other partner's brain or whomever, right? Like we want this to live outside in the world. Creating structure means having a defined sense of what is it that I'm supposed to be doing and when, and what is going to cue me to do that thing. And again, that's a really crucial piece. The cueing ideally is not the parent. I definitely is not the partner, right? Like we want that to be outside of the relationship. And and there's a lot of ways to kind of incorporate technology into that, but you can do it in kind of low tech ways too. And so when you're talking with kids, it's kind of like, what are the expectations of this kid, right? I need them to, in the morning, I need them to get up, I need them to get dressed, I need them to brush their teeth, eat their breakfast, get their school bag, put their shoes on, get their coat on, right? The list of, I don't know what it was, 7, 8 things. So I want to clearly define that with them, ideally. I want to help them see what it means for that to be done, right? So what does brushing your teeth actually look like? Right? Like how involved are we talking here? What does eating breakfast actually look like? Does that mean you eat the cereal and then you walk away? Does it mean that you're putting it, like, what's the full definition here? And really getting very concrete with that of what this whole task looks like, what it means when it's done. Providing some kind of cueing for them, again, externally, so that you're not saying, now it's time to brush your teeth, now it's time to go get dressed, now it's time to, right? And so maybe that's a list that exists in the bedroom, that exists in the kitchen, that exists in the bathroom, right? Like, and then sure, you're probably, as a parent, you're probably going to be somewhat involved in that cueing process. I tend to, with my ADHD kids, say like, hey, what number are we on? How much do we have left? Where are you in the process? What are the things, right? So I'm doing some prompting, but there, I'm not the one saying, hey, you still have to, put your shoes on and put your coat on. I'm saying, where are you? I'm like reorienting them to do the prompting themselves, right? And that list isn't me. I'm not saying, I know you have 8 things left, and here they all are. There, it's living outside of us, right? So creating systems like that that are external, that are cued, it can be really helpful. It won't be all of it, right? There will still be things where that's not going to work. And then I say, okay, so let's look at the places where that's falling down, right? So in my own life, I'll say with my kids, what was a hurdle for a little bit was the getting dressed. They wanted to just like stay in their PJs and stay comfy for as long as possible, but it meant that they had to then go back upstairs and it was a whole thing, right? And so we looked at this and we were like, okay, we're running late every morning because this is happening. How do what's going on here? Right? And so it was a question. It wasn't me saying, this isn't working, you have to do it this way. It was me saying, what's happening here? Why is this, in my mind it should go in this order, but in your mind it's going in this order. Help me understand. And when I heard, I just want to stay cozy as long as possible, I was like, okay, well, can there be another way of working this? Not, can you stop being cozy? It was like, can there be a way of you staying cozy for as long as possible and for this to work, right? And so then we figured out a new system of where the clothes could be and where they could change and all this stuff. And so operating in this kind of like, hey, here's the breakdown, what's going on here, curious kind of way, and then kind of factoring in what motivates people, right? And so for my kids, they wanted to stay cozy. That was motivating for them. So we used that to then say, okay, well, let's stay cozy for as long as possible. And that means you can do all these other things. And then here we're going to kind of solve the issue. And so then I also think about kind of layering in motivational factors because sometimes the problem solving isn't enough either. Sometimes we need to get people into things, right? And so they're having to do things they don't want to do. They don't want to clean the room. They don't want to take a shower. They don't want to do this sort of thing. And so there are kind of 4 very well-researched motivational factors. There's a 5th that is getting more research and attention. The 4 are competition, interest, novelty, and pressure. Pressure comes in 2 forms, interpersonal and time pressure. And the 5th is kind of humor and fun. And so I often will talk to my kids and I talk to my clients too about like, how can we pair these things? How, not everything has those built in. A lot of life doesn't have any of those factors built in. We can wait long enough and maybe we'll get some pressure. But other than that, a life just built on pressure is going to be really unfun. So how can we work some of these other things in? And then we get creative, right? My kids love to listen to audio stories. They hate to take showers. Well, I got them a speaker where I could, play the audio story and while they were in the shower. And
Brilliant.
now I can't get them out of the shower. It's another problem.
Now I got another time constraint.
I think all these systems, though, and what you're saying isn't just for kids. Like, I think about myself and being an adult, and it's like, having a routine is extremely helpful. Knowing what comes next without having to think about it, that's the beauty of a routine, is helpful. At what point, though, Dr. Marcy, is it you have too much on your plate, you're stressed, you're burnt out, and we're just overstimulated because of technology and social media and constantly being bombarded with notifications? Like, at what point is it that versus, no, you actually have ADHD as an adult?
That's a great question. And it is a very timely question right now, right? There's a lot of talk about ADHD, and a lot of talk about neurodivergence in general, lots of different types of neurodivergence. And there is a lot that's very relatable about an ADHD definition and diagnosis. And it can be really hard to kind of differentiate. And so there's kind of two levels to my answer. One is kind of on a practical day-to-day life level. Again, the sense of like, these are just best practices. And so go for it, right? Like if all we're interested in is just kind of making life easier and better and feeling better to you, then, grab all the ADHD strategies. I promise you, they'll be great. No, whether you have ADHD or not, they're going to be useful. That being said, if what we really also need is some level of, I want to understand my brain and I want to understand if this is a fit for me. I want that definition so that I can kind of see my life more clearly. I can look back at my history and understand things more clearly. I can move forward understanding things more clearly. Then I think getting an assessment is really, really useful. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. And it can feel really confusing to kind of navigate that system. I think it's something that we as a field need to do a better job at helping people understand. Because you can go to a general practitioner, right? Like your PCP, you can go and you can say, I think this might be a thing. Maybe they'll have you fill out like a 10-question screener. And maybe you might actually walk away with an ADHD diagnosis and maybe even a prescription. And maybe that will be right. But really a solid assessment is going to be looking at a bunch of different things. It's going to be looking at your childhood because ADHD has to exist in childhood. There is no ADHD that suddenly pops up when you're 50.
Oh, didn't know that.
And so it may, you may have accommodated for many, many years, but we're going to, through a really thorough history, we're going to be able to see the thread line of that accommodation, right? It may not have really hit you and torn you up until you were 50 and you hit perimenopause and, all kinds of different things happened. But I'm going to see that thread line. And if I don't see that thread line, then I'm going to think this is something else. Because what we're talking about is a way that your brain works, right? And so our brains don't suddenly change at 50. It can be that, a whole bunch of other factors have made something bloom. But again, we're going to see those roots there. So we want to be looking at childhood. We want to be really looking at a broad picture. So I always think a good assessment also talks to family members and also talks to ideally like a parent or somebody who knew you as a child as well. We're going to be looking at kind of records from all of those things. I love it when people hand me their like kindergarten report cards. Those are really useful. And And we're also going to be doing a full interview, right? Really good history, as well as measures, right? Because I want to be looking at all the other things that it might also be. A good assessment is really looking at, okay, is this depression? Is this anxiety? Is this trauma? Is this a substance use disorder? Is this sleep? Right? Like, what are the other things that it could be? And it can also be those things, but ferreting out what's here and what's not.
I'm
That's
glad you
super
said that,
helpful.
yeah.
Yeah. I think about what Brooke's saying too. I'm like imagining myself trying to clean up my house while I'm talking to my kids and I'm thinking about what we have for recording going on and I'm leaving the fridge door open and then I'm forgetting 6 different things. And it's like, do I have it? It's like, no. When I look back to my childhood, and I think about, I was great in the classroom. I was able to sit still. I do think there is something that we just put so much on our plates. And especially if you have multiple children talking to you and a lot going on, it's easy to be forgetful. But I know that's a huge part of ADHD though. And why people think they might have it is being forgetful, like just forgetting things and just blanking or not being able to pay attention. And so I'm curious for you, when people are trying to decide, they probably think, okay, maybe I don't have ADHD, but what would you say are some steps people should take to kind of, if it's calm the noise, if it's decide, like, how do you know if you're forgetful because of your brain or you're forgetful because you have so much going on? It's kind of what I'm asking.
I think how you know is looking at the history,
Okay.
really, right? Is this only an issue since you had kids and you started juggling a household and a business and 3 children and pregnancy brain and all the things? Or has this been, have you had people harping on you for all the things that you've forgotten since you were 4?
Yeah.
Right? And if you see that through line, then we're going to lean a little bit more towards this is your brain. If you don't see the through line, then it's probably a little bit more of a life stage, life circumstance thing. Regardless, the steps we're going to take are pretty similar, right? Not equivalent, but similar. And, we're going to look at how do we fill you up more, right? How do we give you more resources? And how do we give you more supports to do the thing that you're struggling to do? And how do we take some things off your plate? So we're going to be looking at those 3 regardless. We just might approach it slightly differently in each of those 3 categories.
Can I just say, this is just the value of a therapist. I mean, for someone to like, especially as your kid's aging, right? You're thinking, okay, they might have something going on here. I do feel like I'm harping on my child a lot. Like, that is not good for their self-esteem, right? And I think as a parent, we carry so much. And I just want anybody that's even considering getting a therapist for their child, even if you don't even think they have an attention disorder, how helpful this can be to have somebody come in to just give tools that literally help anybody, but then can be like, okay, this is what's going on. And when you're feeling this shame because you're forgetting things, you're feeling this, you're different in school and you're exhausted when you get home because you just pretended all day that you were just like everybody else, but it was really hard for you to sit there. I think the value of a therapist is just so apparent when we talk about things like this, because it's hard enough just to be a human being, but then also to be going through your life feeling so different, feeling like you're forgetful, feeling like you're lazy or unmotivated or whatever it is that you're kind of feeling shame about. Like, what a valuable thing to let a therapist enter to get that full picture, to give you some skills. Like what you were just saying, I'm like, what a relief that you exist for so many people, whether they're adults or kids. I'm just so grateful you're doing this work and that people can lean on you. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I also have a therapist, right? Like, therapists are really useful because they don't live inside our life with us, right? That's the power, and that's the privilege that we as therapists have, is that we get to walk alongside. And I often, again, I'm going to use a metaphor that I know you've business using because it's not my field. But I think about like football coaches, right? You have some coaches that are on the sidelines, and then you have some that are like up in the stands in a box somewhere, in somebody's headset, right? And we need everybody. We need the quarterback on the field who's on the field, like living it and reporting back kind of what's happening. We need somebody on the sidelines who's like, and this is kind of like our partners, right? We're like, I'm not in it, but I can see a little bit more. And then we need somebody in the stadium seats who can say like, I see these patterns, right? I'm not hearing what's happening on the field. I'm not like getting all the voices and the whole vibe, but I see these patterns, and having all of those people on your team is really, really useful, and kind of communicating with all of them is really, really useful.
Yeah, as coaches, we could not agree more. For those listening, Dr. Marcy, who want to maybe work with you or learn more about you, follow your work on social media, can you share where all our listeners can find you?
Sure. So my practice is the Center for ADHD, and we are located in the Philadelphia area, but we do work across the country. And on social media, I'm Dr. Marcy Caldwell, and you can also find me at drmarcycaldwell.com, thecenterforadhd.com.
You are the person to find, man. ADHD, you are in it. I love it. And we always end our show with a few segments. One is 3 gold stars. So 3 top takeaways for our listeners.
Okay, 3 top takeaways. So one would be ADHD is a difference. And if you are living inside that difference, trying to see where the passion, where the privilege is of that difference. If you're living alongside that difference, what we're really talking about is translating, right? That one's not better than the other. We're just different. Let's figure out how we can translate and work with it. I think another would be thinking about motivational factors. Thinking about those 5 things, how can we add those in either to our own lives or to our kids' lives? Particularly the fun one. Whenever you can sing or dance or add a little fun to a thing, it's
Why not?
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much that can create a little movement.
Yeah.
And the final would be that, getting the full team, right? You're on the field, get somebody on the sidelines, get somebody in the stadium, and communicate among all of them is really where the power is.
Great advice. Oh, okay. Next segment is Unleashing Ivy. Just a few more questions we're curious about. My question is about you and your story. What inspired you to do the work you do today?
So I graduated from grad school. I was kind of doing more general therapy. I really liked doing assessment. And assessment for psychologists is like a puzzle or like a detective, right? Like you're in there trying to figure it out. And at the time, the way we used to do assessments, they were these long, involved processes. They'd take 20 hours, and you'd end up with a 50-page report. And so it's doing a lot of these assessments. And I was often recommending that people go to therapy. And I had this small therapy practice. So I would recommend people go to therapy, and people would be like, well, I just spent, 50 hours with you. Like, can I just stay here? I don't want to have to redo this. So I started to have these folks that I'd done assessment with in my therapy practice. People tend to come to assessment for ADHD. And so all of a sudden I started looking at my caseload. I'm like, it's ADHD, 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 ADHD. At the same time, I met my husband, and he has ADHD. And so I was coming home and I was like, ADHD, ADHD, ADHD.
It's everywhere.
And at least when I was in grad school, you didn't learn anything about ADHD. There was, one little side comment made during some child psychology class somewhere along the way, and that was it. So I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I was enjoying working with these people. Um, but I was like, you know, I'm just piecing together things here. So I went out looking for more training and really just found that I loved working with this population. I find ADHD brains so engaging and exciting. And I was also really seeing the ways they were struggling and feeling blocked from kind of bringing their full self to the world. And I really wanted to help them unlock that. So it just became kind of a passion of mine. And this was pre-COVID and pre social media blowing everything up. And so as I started to kind of do more of it myself, then I then started to see that there weren't enough other people doing it at the time. Now there's plenty. So then I started to try to like train other people on how to do it because I just saw too many people being unintentionally harmed by people who didn't know what they were doing because we were never taught.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I have so many more questions. I just keep thinking too about just the compassion I'm sure you show these people that have felt like they're carrying this thing for so long. And then you're like, oh no, there's gifts in this. Like, let me help you unlock these gifts. It is so beautiful. Something we didn't really talk about. Gosh, I have two. I'm going to cheat. My second one's really short. Okay. The first one has to do with medication because we didn't really talk about that. And just thinking about, a lot of times when you hear people, they're like, oh, I finally got on medication. It helps me so much. Or I hear, I got on it and then I kept having up my dose and up my dose and up my dose. And then it just became a problem. And I hear those stories and I'm sure you've seen so many sides of how this works. And so I'm just curious how you feel about people trying to navigate life without it and building skills to be able to function in society without medication versus like, it has to be time for medication now. Like, where do you land with that?
So I don't know that I land at any particular place in a general way, right? I think the medication that we have for ADHD is vastly more effective for what we call the core symptoms, which are inattention and focus issues, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. So vastly more effective for those symptoms than literally any other psychotropic medication we have for any other disorder. And so I always have it in my list of potential tools, right? And as you said, it is not perfect. There are a lot of side effects. There are a lot of things that people struggle with. When it's purely the stigma that people are struggling with, then I push, right? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there about ADHD meds, and there's a lot of kind of ugh that people have about ADHD meds, and so that I want to work through because it is a tool and it's a really effective tool, and there's a lot that's untrue about its addictive potential, things like that, and if people have tried it and it's not working, right, either because they can't handle the side effects or because, they keep kind of having to increase the dose or it's making them anxious or whatever it is, they can't sleep, they can't eat, then it's a matter of, can we manage those side effects? And if we can't, okay, let's build all the other kinds of tools. There are a lot of ways that we can increase regulatory capacity, increase that kind of like getting that lever to the just right middle ground. And medication is one of them. It's a really powerful tool, but so is sleep, so is nutrition, so is exercise. Exercise is my personal favorite of all of them. And so it's connection, and so is meditation. So, if we can't use one of those levers, then I'm gonna go hard on the other one.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's that combination. And I think it's an option that nobody has to feel bad about trying. You are neurodivergent. You have something that is affecting your ability to thrive with the rest of the world. And there's no shame in trying it. It helps so many people, right? And then and if you're not comfortable with that or you do have the side effects, there's no shame in getting off of it. I love talking about it both ways, where we don't have to make anybody feel bad. We don't know what's going on in your brain. We can't totally put ourselves in your shoes. Like, if that's something you want to try, celebrate it. Like, try it. Maybe it'll be the thing that helps you be able to function like you've never been able to before. Okay, and I'm cheating. I'm throwing in one extra one. As I told my kids that you were going to be here today, and I said, does anybody have a question for an expert on ADHD? And one of my kids said, yes, I want to know, what does ADHD make you better at?
Great question.
So this is not mine. This is from my kids, so it's not really cheating.
I'm going to do a little asterisk first before I answer this question, sure. Which is, there is a corner of the internet that's all about the superpowers of ADHD, and that can be really painful and really triggering for some people, because it can make people feel like, but I'm really struggling with this, and this is really hard in my life. And so I just want to say, even though I'm very happy to talk about the strengths, and they are very present, it doesn't diminish from the struggle, right? We can have both, and we do. All people have both. ADHD brains very much have both, and ADHD brains love extremes. And so guess what? They have a lot of really painful struggle. They also have a lot of really great strength. So when we look at the whole picture, what we're looking at in terms of strength is we're looking at a brain that can do a lot of creative problem solving, right? And this comes from its tendency to kind of have this wandering attention. It's getting a lot of information in at the same time, because it tends not to kind of filter out information. So it's getting a lot of information at the same time. It's hopping from one thing to the next, not necessarily in a linear order. And in so doing, it can come up with new creative ways of solving a problem. So having somebody neurodivergent on a team is really, really useful. Oftentimes, that person is also really, really good at seeing the thing that's wrong. That can kind of see a big picture and notice the thing that's not fitting and not working. That can be hard for other team members, right? Because they're like, we just want to ignore that and just look at the good stuff here. But it's also really important. It's really important to see the thing that's not working. ADHD brains are also very intuitive, and they tend, and this is partly because they bring in so much information, and they tend not to filter out things. So they don't have somebody in the brain kind of being like, yeah, that's not important, don't pay attention to that. It's all coming in, and so they often will intuit something. They may not always know why they're leaning in this particular direction, but they're like, oh, I don't like that person, or I'm not liking this situation. When you really dig into it, you see, they were actually bringing in a lot of information that other people were ignoring. So they tend to be very intuitive, and deeply feeling. And often, the other thing that I love about people with ADHD is when they bring their attention and their focus, it's like shining the brightest light on that thing, that person, right? That I was standing on a playground a couple years ago with a friend of mine who has ADHD, and she and I were talking, and her kid was kind of like trying to get her attention. But we were talking, and so she was not paying attention. And eventually the kid got her attention, and she knelt down, and you could just see, like, she turned her full attention on her child, and you could see this child just like light up. It was like she blossomed, just with this like full shine of her attention. And I think that is one of the greatest gifts that people with ADHD can bring, is that energy and that fun and that enthusiasm, that is, just really lights up a room.
Oh,
Love that.
it's making me emotional because I'm thinking of so many people listening to you right now that have never heard their gifts this way. Like you just listed so many, and I think it's so hard to go through life and feel unseen. And I know a lot of people that you're speaking to right now that have either not been diagnosed or are thinking about testing. And the way that you just explained how their brain works is going to help so many people feel seen. And that's really important. And like you said, connection is so huge when you're navigating something like this. So I'm just really grateful the way that you expressed all of those positive things, because so many times you hear the negatives, the laziness, the forgetfulness, mindlessness, and it's not true. It's just they function differently. So it's choking me up thinking of like people feeling seen for the first time. So thank you for answering that question.
Of course, thank you for bringing it up, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. And I I know this population really well, and I love this I'm here for a reason, because ADHD brains have so much to offer. And yeah, they're a really magical crew.
Okay, last question, Dr. Marcy. If you could go back and tell younger you one thing, what age would you choose and what would you tell her?
So the answer that just came to me was, it's gonna be okay. Right? Like I think I would love to go to my late teen self and just say, like, it's all gonna be okay, and it gets better. Um that's been the thing that I've been telling younger women these days anyways, is just like, it just gets better.
Yeah.
Like every decade is better than the last. We're like sold this bill of goods that, your teens and 20s are the good ones. And the older I get, the more I'm just like, no. And 40s, 50, like I'm here for it. Can't even wait to see what 80 is.
I love that.
That's so timely because Brooke just entered her 30s and I'm just entering my 40s. And so it's encouraging to hear that. And I agree too. I love aging. I feel like you're right. It just gets better.
I was very ready to leave my 20s. I was like, and hello 30. What do you have for me?
I felt the same way, but I was also a little trepidatious. And it was really when I entered my 40s that I was like, oh, yeah, this is good. And now I'm like inching towards 50, and I'm excited to see what that's all about.
Oh, well, Dr. Marcy, it's been such a great episode to learn more about ADHD. We're just scratching the surface, but I love how you talk about it. I love how well you understand that population. I love that you're helping them feel seen and understood and giving them skills, and that you know that you're here for a reason. I think you stepping into this is your gift, and getting on the podcast and sharing this message, like you could just sit with your gift in a corner, right? But you're using your gifts to understand these people and then explain more so that we can all have more compassion. We can understand others better. We can see this is an invisible thing that, like, we never know what people are going through. And so I'm just so grateful that we met you and that you shared all this information today and a new way of looking at ADHD. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This has really been a pleasure.
So last but not least, we leave our listeners with what we call a piece of gold, a quote that speaks to you. Could be something, a quote that has inspired you over the years, something that's top of mind, that's getting you through life, or just a last piece of wisdom you want to send us off with. What would it be?
These are tough, guys. I think what has really been speaking to me lately has been honoring yourself, or honoring myself, right? And just kind of checking in, assessing what is feeling like a fit these days and what's not, honoring that, and seeing how I can shift and change a little bit to make that work. And so kind of checking in and assessing how I can best honor myself today has really been a thing that I've been working with and living with in the past, I don't know, couple of years.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold. We want to thank you and encourage you to celebrate yourself for taking the time to learn and get inspired in your one beautiful life. And if this podcast means something to you, it would mean so much to us if you'd be willing to take 30 seconds to help support our mission to keep bringing you inspiring stories and guests.
First, following the podcast is important because it helps you never miss an episode. To do this, just go to the Ivy Unleashed podcast show page on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow.
While you're there, if you'd be so kind to give us a 5-star rating and review and share your favorite episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful for your support.
We are thrilled you're here and are so happy that you're taking time to prioritize your wellness, self-discovery, and growth with us. Additionally, we want to remind you that this podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are not licensed therapists, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professionals.